Hello, this is my week 3 post about the wife of his youth, a sweatshop romance, and a white heron. Um, in the wife of his youth, I think that the first 4 paragraphs of this story are critical in understanding how American identities are being portrayed in all 3 stories. The story starts off by explaining Mr. Ryder's contribution to the society known as Blue Veins. We get a clear understanding of what exactly the society's purpose is, and that's, and I quote, to establish and maintain correct social standards among a people whose social condition presented almost unlimited room for improvement. So, the group of people who make up the society have a responsibility or a duty to establish and maintain correct social standards. So, it is basically addressing and setting forth the proper way to act in society, making the rules um, on pretty much on behavior in society is what they do. Initially, Blue Veins was made up of colored men. Over time, however, white men became the larger makeup of this group. So really, over time, it became white men telling colored men how they should be behaving in society in order to succeed and be, or in order to be successful in society, I guess. Mr. Ryder is mulatto, so black and white, I guess. He is presented to us as a well respected man. One of the lines reads, "He was always neatly dressed, his manners were irreproachable, and his morals have suspicion." Um, we know that he is single, but wants to ask Mrs. Dixon's hand in marriage, a white woman. And that is essentially the reason he throws the ball to begin with. On page 471, we get to see a room full of people who are attending the ball. And these are all people who are in the society. The individuals are predominantly people of color who have accomplished a great length in their lives and are examples to follow. One of the lines states that the occasions like this were, and I quote, memorable among the colored people of the city, not alone for their dress and display, but for the high average of intelligence and culture that distinguished the gathering as a whole. So it shows you a room full of school teachers, professors, or professional singers, doctors, lawyers, and so on and so forth. It lists the different types of people that attended the ball. I think that this was one of my favorite scenes in this story because you see a bunch of colored people or, just mixed race, I guess, interracial people gathered together, acknowledging each other's accomplishments. And they're all proud of that. They're all proud of what they become. But at the same time, they had to sacrifice a lot to be there. So I think that Mr. Ryder's decision to tell the story of Lisa Jane was important because she is the one person in the room who has not been as successful as her peers. She is not a part of this society. She's not a part of this society that feels the need to regulate certain behaviors for society, if that makes sense. Um, her enunciation of words, her way of speaking, her history. I mean, it's all significantly different from everyone else's in the room. I mean, she's the only one that was pointed out as being a slave at one point. And so, in the end, you have this African American woman who is humble and kind. Though she's not educated like the rest, she certainly stands out. And the other people in the room are people who have pertained to a society to behave a certain way in order to succeed and have made this themselves, I guess, different. And I think that the display of her next to Mr. Ryder is really important in just acknowledging the fact that, like, she, when they talk about her, they also say that she's really dark in color and everyone else is lighter than she is. And yet you can't be African American without, like, you can't just dismiss certain people in your group because you feel the need to, if that makes sense. Um, and that's what I got out of that story. And in a sweatshop romance, I think it was as sort of the same as the wife of his youth in the aspect that individuals set aside who they are in order to pretend to be someone they're not. So, for example, the owners act demanding and treat the workers as inferior to them, like servants, like they say in the story. And the reason they do this is only because of who they have as guests. They want them to think that they, I guess, are higher up in society here than they were where they come from. And I think that the whole scene with that was just really awkward. Just viewing that or reading about it and just being there, it was just really, really weird. And I was also reading an article online about this also being a story that encourages people to stand up for one's morals and for their rights, to not allow others to speak down to them and pretend that they are not equal. Um, because this story does talk about the lower, I think, lower Jew classes, I think. Yeah. And so basically the author is encouraging for one to speak up. And David is the one person who speaks up, despite the fact that he would no longer have a job. Haman did not do this. He did not speak about anything, neither his feelings towards the girl that he liked, and I cannot pronounce her name, I'm sorry. And he also remained silent when the owner was being demanding towards them. He was more concerned about getting money than he was about earning respect and standing up for what he believes is right, for what he knows to be right, for what he feels inside. He was more concerned about just, you know, just acting right rather than speaking up. And because he did this, he didn't speak out for anything. He got nothing. He didn't get the girl, and he was unhappy with himself towards the end. And a white heron in the white heron, it was a little different from the other two. It was more innocent, I think, than anything else. The story is very sweet in the beginning, describing the cow, the girl, and their relationship, and like the fields and the birds and everything else. It was very sweet. But when the guy comes by, it changes the scenery of the story. The story sort of loses that innocent aspect of it until the girl decides to save the heron's life. Like the wife of his youth, both the little girl and Lisa are examples of loyalty. The girl is loyal to the white heron, and Lisa is loyal to Mr. Ryder. And but towards the end of A White Heron, it reveals that she is pondering the thought of whether loyalty is that important. Like, did she do the right thing by saving the birds? Was it really worth it? So was it worth saving the birds? And then in the wife of his youth, the question would be whether looking for him for all those years was worth it. Like, is it really worth it to do those things? Because I mean, if you do take into consideration that he was preparing to wed another woman at the time, these stories, I think that they all reflect loyalty, people speaking up for what they believe to be true, and then they also talk about people pretending to be something that they're not. I think that's what I got out of it. Thank you.